Is the government of the city of Osawatomie operating in an impartial and just manner? Well, unfortunately, that's up for debate, and increasingly so as I hear of more and more citizens complaining about overreach from the city government, intruding in people's lives and trampling on their rights. I'd like to talk a little bit about a couple of cases that have come to my attention, illustrating a troubling trend of unjust operation in the Osawatomie city government. Lately, I've been hearing a story unfold time and time again in town of people who are afraid of the government coming after them for nuisance violations that seem to be getting ever more picky and restrictive. I saw an image of one such nuisance violation posted by a citizen who, based on the images provided and the areas circled on the notice, had a few long weeds on the interior of the yard and maybe a few items on his lawn, although I wasn't seeing them in the images myself. And cited in the letter were the nuisance violations of 1. Tall, unsightly, or intrusive vegetative growth on premises, and 2. Scattered trash or discarded items in yard. Based on the image I saw that was sent with the violation, it looked like a yard that maybe needed a little TLC, but really it didn't look that bad, at least to me. But you see, that's the thing. The violation cited was entirely dependent on the subjective interpretation of the government official handing out the citation. Government, at its most basic and essential function, exists to protect the rights of the citizens. In order to protect these rights, and indeed in order to adequately and justifiably perform any of the government's functions, all actions that the government takes must be fully within sound principles of justice, blind to subjective interpretations, focused instead on simply applying the law as written. Are there codes that maybe are written poorly and in ways that require a high degree of subjective interpretation? Perhaps so. And enforcement of these laws and codes, if not fully and objectively defined, must lean in favor of the citizens, not in favor of the government or its employees. Let us never forget that it is the government that serves the citizens with a promise to protect their rights, and not the citizens who work to appease and obey the government. Should the punitive arm of the law bring down fines or other punishments on the citizens, a truly just system would only take such punitive actions when a clear violation of law has been observed and recorded. Really, the city even employing an individual as a nuisance violation officer demonstrates an attitude and desire within the city government of using such codes as a means of coming down on and controlling the behavior of citizens, not protecting their rights. Another such case that has been highly publicized in Osawatomie is the case of the government, allegedly even the city manager himself, removing the meter from property owned by Dean Inscore, on which there's a trailer home that Dean Inscore owns and has begun renovating into a suitable home that he can rent out to a low-income family. Dean Inscore has requested several times for the return of the meter, but the city manager has held his ground, refusing to return it, allegedly on the grounds that the trailer home is ugly, that Dean hasn't renovated it quickly enough, and that Dean Inscore does not own the meter, so he has no right to ownership to it. Well, this isn't how the law works, and it's not how any just government should be operating. If the reasons for removing the meter had something to do with laws that Dean had violated, the consequence of which required the removal of the meter, that would be one thing, and it would be fully justifiable. But if the reasons for removing the meter were rooted in the appearance of the trailer, or how long it has been in the process of being renovated, or any other similar kind of reason, those are all entirely subjective and are not reflective of a government that is abiding by and enforcing the law in an impartial and just manner, but of a government that has run amok with its power and is using its power to control the people to the whims and desires of government employees. In this case, allegedly, the city manager. Even with all those arguments aside, however, perhaps the most outrageous argument of all is that no citizen, including Dean Inscore, owns their meter, and therefore no citizen has any right of ownership to it. While it is true that no individual citizen in Osawatomie owns their very own meter, this is only because the meters are controlled, installed, and monitored by the city of Osawatomie as a public utility. Since it is a public utility, that means it's paid for by the public. all the people who live and pay taxes in Osawatomie. So, hold on a minute. I guess that means that if you're paying taxes in Osawatomie, your meter does belong to you after all. And not that you get to take it with you when you leave Osawatomie, but as long as you're paying your bills and your taxes, the government has no just legal grounds for removing your meter from you, regardless of what any government employee thinks or says, even the city manager. In addition to these two examples, I've heard allegations of potential law enforcement abuse, and I've noted in another video the problem inherent in our municipal judge being hired directly by the city manager. In any government and at all levels, it is essential that the government operate objectively and fully aligned with sound principles of blind, impartial justice. Yes, even in Osawatomie. Thank you for watching, and please write in Oliver Tanner for Mayor of Osawatomie.